Good evening, my name is Connie Boyer, and it is Monday, September 26th, 2022. And tonight I have Steve Redinger from the water treatment plant and Shawn Worley from our wastewater treatment plant. And there's been a lot going on in the last couple years, and the last several years actually, and so I thought it was time for an update for our community to understand what happens at each of these facilities. And so we're going to talk a little bit about historical perspective and what's coming up in the future. And also I want to talk a little bit about career paths, that if you've got a child or someone that's getting ready to go to college, so they understand what kind of work they really do and what's needed to do this kind of work. And so we're going to start with water coming in with Steve, and we'll end up with Shawn as water going out. So Steve, let's start with you.
Okay.
Let's talk about, where does our water come from?
Our water comes from the Jordan Aquifer, is where it comes from. It starts in Minnesota and runs diagonally across all the state of Iowa. It's about 2,000 feet deep. We have 3 wells that we pull our water out of, and we're all deep well water.
Great.
So.
And that's different than it used to be, correct?
Yes, we used to be, years ago, surface water, totally. And then we went to a blend, surface water and deep well water. And then DNR and everybody come into play. And in around 99, 2000, we went all deep well water.
And was that directly related to DNR requirements?
It was the best suggestion at the time because we was having turbidity issues. Mm-hmm. So that was the main draw of that, because coming out of the Jordan Aquifer, it's stable all the time.
Yeah. And before, it used to come out of Waterworks Park.
Yep.
And number 2 pond, correct?
Well,
and Walton.
Bonnefield Lake.
Yeah.
And then,
I still know them by the old names,
yeah,
sorry.
number 1, number 2. And then also over Walton, we had that lake too. So
right?
we used to pump out all those.
Yeah, and we didn't used to have any recreational activities on those lakes.
No.
So Steve needs to come over a little bit?
No, he just needs to turn his mic.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So that's why we didn't have activities, more recreational activities on some of those lakes prior to what we have today.
Right,
You
because
know.
we was pulling out of the lakes. That was our sole source.
Right.
So.
Wow, that's interesting. It might make a difference, although our lakes are pretty full right now, I think.
Yeah,
sure,
but,
you know,
over the years, they start silting in.
Yeah.
The depth starts going down.
yeah.
So
talk a little bit about what's that process when that water comes in. What happens next?
Well, we have 2 processes. We have lime softening, traditional lime softening, and we have our EDR system, which is electrodialysis reversal. It's a membrane is what it is. It uses electricity to collect the positive ions and the negative ions out of the water. So half of that water, let's say we're pulling in 1,000 gallons a minute, 500 gallons of that will go to the lime softening process, and the other 500 gallons will go to the EDR. And then we'll blend that together into our reservoir, or the clear well. The reason for the EDR is the deep well water is high in sulfates and total dissolved solids. The membrane takes all that out, but the lime softening will not. So that's why we blend that.
Okay. So I know every once in a while I've heard people ask about, chlorine in our water or fluoride, and maybe have a concern of what that is. Can you explain that a little bit?
Get a lot of calls on that. The nice thing about the Jordan deep well water is we have a natural fluoride level of 1.1 to 1.3. We don't feed any fluoride.
And what should it be? I mean, that's in the range where it should be, you're saying?
If you was feeding fluoride, that's where you'd want to be in that range.
Okay.
So we don't have to feed any fluoride, and we don't. On our chlorine, we use very little chlorine because the deep well water, there's not a lot of demand on it, to eat up the chlorine. So on a typical day, we'll use maybe 40 pounds and treat 1.2 million gallons a day. And then we also blend it with the natural ammonia in the water to form chloramines. It persists in the system longer because we feed water to Lockridge, which they feed to Rome. We also feed Jefferson County Rural Water, Libertyville, along with Fairfield and some of rural Fairfield.
Yeah. So your water is not just staying in Fairfield.
No.
But those people are buying it from us, so there's
Yes.
a rate that they pay
Right.
to get that water from us.
Yep.
Okay, so tell us about those membranes. I've seen them at the water treatment plant. It's quite fascinating. And can you talk about that a little bit?
It's a pretty interesting process. It's got, like I said, the electrodes, one on the top, one on the bottom, and I think we have a photo of the stacks. But there's stage 1 and stage 2. Yeah, there they are. Stage 1 and stage 2. So your first stage will have about 325 volts DC. The second stage will have right around 300, 285. And it uses that. Every 15 minutes it will flip polarity. And when it's in the positive mode, it'll take out the negative ions in the water. And then it flips every 15 minutes and it'll take out the positive ions in the water. I can't remember off the top of my head how many stacks there is, membranes in there. But there's a lot.
Yeah.
Those are standing on the ground. Those are about 10 feet tall, and they'll get hot spots in them. The guys will have to tear that off. Those are just protective coatings on there right now, for the fact you don't want to touch them when they're running, because of that kind of voltage going through them. And they'll have to tear all that down to get to the hot spot, replace the membranes.
Okay, so like there's a membrane that's not working anymore,
Right,
you mean?
yeah.
So that's what you call the hot spot?
Yep.
Okay.
They'll take a probe and go through it, and they'll see the voltage reading spiked
Gotcha.
up. That's when
Gotcha.
they know, okay, we got to tear this down and do some work.
So how many stacks do we have?
There we have 5 lines on each side, so we can do 1 million gallons with this EDR, both sides running.
1 million a day?
Yeah, 1 million a day.
And how much do we use every day?
1.2.
Yeah.
But our old plant, the lime softening plant, is capable of doing 4 million gallons a day.
Okay, so we are not running at capacity, which that's a good thing.
Yep.
How much does one of those stacks cost?
Oh, those stacks, each line is going to be around $100,000, which they are nearing the end of their life. They're about 20 years old now. So we've got to think about replacing those. So we're looking at probably $2.5 million to get everything done.
And when do you anticipate that happening?
I would like to see that happen within the next year or two.
Okay. So when that happens, do you anticipate our water rates going up?
We'll have to review that. Our water rates have not went up this year at all. So we've got to review that. We did have it to where they went, a little bit every year, but not right now. So this will be something we'll have to look at and see just how we're doing.
Yeah. So that's something coming up. Is there anything else coming up that you see in the future here besides those stacks?
That'll be our big ticket item. The clarifiers in there, they've always got to have work and rehab done on them. Your motors, the high service pumps and what have you, the wells. As a matter of fact, we're getting one rebuilt as we speak. So that runs into a little bit of money. And as soon as they're done with that one, they've got to move up and do the other one, because it's getting in need of repairs. No time to wait. It's time to do it.
Yeah.
So we have those expenses going on right now. But
And when you go out Pleasant Plain Road, you see those couple areas with water in them. Explain what those are.
oh, the sludge lagoons. That's where all the lime from the lime softening plant, that's where all that goes. It blows off, because they've got automatic blow-offs on the tanks, and they'll blow out that sludge and go out, and that's where it settles out at. And now we're in the process now of hauling some of that out. We'll switch cells. You can get about 10 years out of each cell.
Okay.
So we're in process of trying to get that other one cleaned out now and dried. Farmers love this stuff because they can put it on their fields and hay fields that'll grow.
So do we sell that to farmers?
I've been giving it to them,
Yeah. Okay.
so, just to get rid of it
Yeah.
out of there. So
Yeah. So it's nice to have a source to
Yeah.
send that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it can be used and utilized. So
Yeah. What else is, important in there? I know we barely touched on how everything works, but talk about some of the equipment and the day-to-day, the testing, the things that, what does it really take every day to run this plant?
it's constant maintenance repair, because you've got so many motors there, moving parts. It's always something to do. They have to do the test daily. DNR requires us, they tell us what tests we're going to be running every 2 years. They'll make up our operating permit, and tell us, this is what we want you to start testing for, and this many times a day. So every day of the morning they'll test. You also got to get the readings, how many pounds of chemicals you've used, how much water you bring in, how much you pumped out. All that has to be recorded every day at 8 o'clock. So somebody's there 7 days a week, 24/7. Well, not 24/7, but 7 days a week doing that.
Yeah.
So, and I got 3 operators at the plant, and one of them, somebody's always on call. And we have a dialer system. So let's say the pH gets a little high or the pH gets a little low, they're going to be getting the call
Okay.
to come in and check it out. The same way with the chlorine, any of that stuff, it's going to be giving you a call, letting you know, because everything's on an alarm system. So,
And that's attached to everybody carries their phone, and it's attached to their phone, correct?
Yep. So, yeah, it's monitored all the time.
Yeah, and you all just take turns.
Yep,
Who's on call?
rotate through.
Yep.
That's on the plant side. Then you have your distribution side, which I got 4 guys over there. And so they take care of all the fire hydrants, all the leaks, the water mains. We've laid quite a bit of pipe in-house, water main pipe. So they do that, along with, fixing the yards after we dig them up, trying to get them taken care of, reconcreting what we bust up. So they take care of all that, along with metering. We split that up between wastewater and us. They take it half a year, we take it half a year.
Okay.
And so they do all that too. Work orders, replacing water meters, frozen meters, anything that comes about.
Yeah. Talk about, stop box.
Oh, yeah.
And how you monitor those or check those, and we're not working, who's responsible for fixing what. It's, talk about those things that happen that are the owner's responsibility, and what's the city's responsibility.
Okay. The city takes care of the water main in front of the home. They'll take care of the saddle, which goes around the pipe to tap the hole, and then the corp. We take care of that. The service line, which is generally 3/4, going to the home, the homeowner's responsible for that. And they're responsible for the stop box. Now, when the city laid the water main years ago, and we still do that to this day, like Highway 1 we're doing right now, we're laying a new water main down through there. We'll also hook on and run new copper for them and give them a stop box.
And the stop box does what?
The stop box stops the water from going into your home.
There you go.
And
Thank you.
It serves as a dual purpose. It works for us to have a little control if somebody's not paying. But it also helps the homeowner. There's been so many times there's valves inside the home and they never get turned.
Right?
And then they have an issue. So they go to turn that valve and it breaks. Can't get the water shut off. Well, the stop box can help that, but at times they don't always work too, so they have to be replaced. I mean, it's like anything mechanical.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be replaced over time, but everybody gets a free stop box to that residence to begin with.
Okay.
And then after that, it's theirs.
So is that a maintenance thing that people should be checking in where their water comes in, moving it once a year or something?
The only way to really check those is to have us come out and turn it on or off, but we can't be held responsible if it breaks.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not something that you normally do, it sounds like then.
No, we don't do that.
It's not like everybody's, that's what, 6,000 households you'd have to
Yeah.
go to, so that's not part of your normal routine.
I have a lot of snowbirds, and they like to have their water shut off. So we'll shut it off there at the stop box.
Okay.
So that way they don't have to come back home to a real huge bill if the heat went out or something like that while it's gone.
Sure.
It freezes up.
Yeah.
We've had that a lot.
And so if somebody wants that, they're going to call City Hall, correct?
Yeah.
And get that taken care of? All righty.
Yep.
So good. Anything else with that we need to know, that the public needs to know?
As far as the stop boxes, that's about covers it.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Any other pieces of equipment that you want to show here? You had the pumps that were, the distribution. So I think that was
high service pumps.
Yeah,
Yep,
right there.
There they are. Those are the pumps that pumps all the water to town. All those are VFD controlled, which is variable drive frequency. So we can just, the one closest here in the picture and the furthest one, they'll do anywhere from 500 to 2,200 gallons a minute. They'll pump out to town. And we can take them, just dial that up however much we want to take out. And then the middle one, it'll do about 500 to 1,500 gallons a minute.
And when it's leaving those buildings, where does it go?
From there, it's going into the main feeders, going out of the plant, going out to town. And we have 4 of them that goes out from the plant. And they'll all supply town, and then they go up into the water towers. When the water towers gets full, it tells that pump, hey, you're full, shut off. So it'll automatically shut off.
Yeah.
Same way when the water tower drops, it'll kick one of those pumps on and to fill it back
Yeah.
up.
And so we have a water tower just a couple blocks from here, right?
Yep, we've got, well, B Street Tower, which is 500,000 gallons, and then we have the Grimes Street Water Tower, which is 750,000 gallons.
Interesting. And those need maintenance from time to time, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, and that gets expensive.
Yeah. So tell us about that, and tell us what. I mean, again, I want to get into careers, and so you might touch on that. What kind of career that is for somebody to do that kind of thing, but also touch on careers for you guys too.
Yeah, well, like at our plant, DNR, they grade your grade licenses. We're a grade 4 plant, and that's as high as you can be, is a grade 4. And that's what our water plant is. We are a grade 3 distribution system. So to work in the distribution system, you at least have to have a grade 2, you know, and then in the plant you have to have at least a grade 2 to be able to do the test on your own without any supervision. But you got to get those licenses.
So does a person get that by going to college, community school? Do they get it on the job? Any and all, or?
You can go to Kirkwood, has a water program up there.
Okay.
And it's a 2-year program, and when you come out of there, you get a grade 2. If
Okay.
you pass, you know, the course and the test. But so you can get it that way. If you can get on someplace and get started, and somebody will take you on and train you. Then after, if you have any college, you can advance a lot quicker. Otherwise, you just have to do time in the plant and get your CEUs, continuing education,
Okay.
to get enough to take the test and keep going.
So there's nowhere you can get that 3rd and 4th level at school? I mean,
No.
just to come out with?
To get a grade 3 treatment and a grade 4 treatment, you have to work, I believe it's a minimum of 5 years in that grade of plant
Okay.
to get that. And then also have enough continuing education units, which pretty much comes close to 4 years college.
So, and Indian Hills, do they have a program?
I don't believe they have a program over there
Okay.
for water or sewer. I know Kirkwood, Cedar Rapids does. That's the closest
Okay.
one I know of.
Okay, sounds good. So if you're interested in this kind of work, that's where you would need to go here locally. So talk about the maintenance of the water towers, because I know we've talked about divers and all that kind of thing. So what has to be done on a water tower?
Well, with anything, you're going to have sediment. So we'll have the divers come in. They disinfect themselves off, and down in they go. And they will vacuum all that sediment out. While they're down there, they're also filming, looking for any rust spots that needs to be taken care of. Then they let us know. So we review that every few years, and we see, oh boy, it's time. Then we got to drain the tower down, take it out of service. They'll go in there and start sandblasting and cleaning all that up and repainting it. And it gets pretty hefty on that bill. It's not something you want to do every year.
Right.
So.
And didn't we just have that done like 3 years ago?
Yep, we had the inside of Grimes Street done.
Okay.
Totally all done.
So what kind of cost are we talking about to have that done?
That bill's around $300,000.
Wow, yeah. So if you like to be underwater, scuba diving,
But those guys also
this
come
is a
in.
possible career.
They'll come in. Oh yeah, a lot of these guys come out of the military, and that's what they did: welding underwater, what have you. Well, now
Gotcha.
they do this, and they'll come and they'll go in our clear well too, and get all the sediment out of that and take pictures, and they can repair pipes under there too if it needs to be.
And is that at the,
That's at the plant.
that's at the plant? Okay, interesting. Well, that's interesting that a lot are coming out of the military.
Yeah.
So they would
That's where
get
they go.
that training in the military.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of those guys are out of the military.
Fascinating,
And
I
they're
didn't know
doing
that.
that, yep.
So, see, there you go. Another good reason to join the military.
Learn a trade.
Learn a trade, free school, right? So very fascinating. Gee whiz, what else about that? Any other things that we should know about that particular thing? What other pictures do you want to show? Is there any?
I do have a clarifier, the lime softening plant. There's the filters. That's the last stage of the lime softening plant before it goes into the clear well. That's got about 2.5 feet of anthracite coal, about 1.5 foot of sand, and then another 1.5 foot of coarser sand. And then it's got these mesh little tubes at the bottom of the concrete floor, so it's got to settle all through that anthracite coal, all that sand, and go through those screens before it ever goes into the clear well, before it's gone to town.
Yeah.
So that's what that picture is of the filters.
A lot of filtering going on there.
Yep.
So
That's the clarifier. That's
Okay.
the last stage before it goes on top of those filters that we just saw.
okay,
So, because when it comes in, when we soften it, it goes into this one basin where we hit it with the lime. And just for instance, it's about 330 parts per million hardness when it comes in. When it goes through the first stage of the lime softening, it'll knock it down to about 180 parts per million hardness. Then the last stage, you're right around 130, and by the time it goes to the filters and then the chlorine, when it goes to your tap, you've got about 80 parts per million of hardness. That's how much we soften it up altogether.
do people put water softeners in their homes here normally?
Yeah, we have a lot of those. Now, when we're doing lead and coppers, we cannot use their homes because water softeners have a tendency to make the water corrosive. So even if you have all copper pipes, prior to 1983, I think it was, when they banned lead solder, if you're softening too much and your water's aggressive, it will leach that lead out. So they do not allow us to take samples from the consumer's home if they have a water softener.
Interesting.
Because we use the Langner index, and we try to make ours slightly depositing for that fact, to keep the lead and coppers, at bay.
How deep is that section right
That
there?
section right there is 18 feet deep.
Okay. So that brings to my mind, what do you see as the risks as far as having, people working in this line of work? They fall in, they can't swim, right? But hopefully that's not the case. I can see, obviously
Well,
there's places there where railings, so you're not going to fall in.
But that's why we have all of our safety training
Right.
and all that, because we do have to take those down. We do get down there and touch up, repaint, all that stuff. I mean,
Okay.
it's just a yearly thing. You take
Yeah.
one clarifier down and touch up the rust spots and get them all cleaned up. So you have that, but we do have safety measures in place for that. That's why we always take all the safety trainings and what have you.
Yeah. Okay, fascinating. Is there anything that, as a homeowner, people should be aware of that, what are the things that come up, they go, something's not right, and then who do they call?
Well, if they feel something's wrong with their water or their water meter or anything like that, and they're not for sure, call the water office. The girls will
Yeah.
explain that to you, and they'll set up an appointment.
So that's calling up to City Hall here.
And then
Yep.
they ship us the work orders, and then the guys will go out and make appointments to reach out to each person that
Okay.
is having an issue,
Yeah.
or just don't know.
Yeah. Right.
That's a lot of it. Sometimes they just don't know. So
Yeah. And then, I assume is it you guys that are doing the flushing at different areas? Who does the flushing?
we do the flushing.
Yeah,
Yep, we're going to do that this spring.
okay.
We've had 40-some leaks since August, and we just haven't had the manpower or the time to keep up with that, so
Yeah.
we're going to do it this spring, so
Okay,
this
so-
fall. Generally, we always do it in the fall, but
Okay,
we're going
that's
to
what I
do it
was
in the
gonna
spring.
ask,
Yeah.
when you normally do that?
Yep.
And is that, do you have a set route, so to speak, around town
Yep.
when you do it?
Yep, we got a pattern that we follow, and certain valves that we turn off to make it kind of backflow, to get those barnacles and anything in the pipe to really roll out of there.
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
And you said you had 40 leaks just in the last couple months, so what do we attribute those to?
Dryness. It's just been so dry.
Yeah.
You know, some of them could have been pipe just getting weak, getting old, and then the ground starts pulling away from it and exposed it. And
Okay.
here we go.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of it.
Yeah, well, I was telling Shawn, I saw, somebody out there I don't know if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago over by Chautauqua Park on a Saturday night for hours, and I went, those poor guys, they've been there all night long.
Yeah.
And they really want to be home watching a movie.
Yep. You make it through the day and you think, okay, and then they go home and sure enough, they get a call.
Yeah.
Back out you go.
Yep. So kind of a bummer,
Yeah, but that's just part of it.
that's part of it. And
Take the good with the bad.
right, and as a homeowner, and when your water doesn't work, so yeah, I just want to say we appreciate the fact that you're there to get us back up and running and do that work. We appreciate it. And so you're fully staffed right now. Are you looking for anybody?
Not right at this time.
Not right at this
We're
time.
fully staffed.
Okay.
Pretty good crew, so.
In your area, is it hard to find guys coming out of college, that are interested in this career?
It didn't used to be. The last 2 years, yeah, it's just hard to get
Yeah,
people in, but hopefully that'll start changing.
yeah. And do you go to like the high school or anything and talk to the kids about that? Is there any career days that you?
Haven't. We do have kids come and we'll give them a tour of the facility.
Okay.
Leadership, young Chamber of Commerce.
Great.
They just did one with them. Got another one trying to line up a tour.
Good.
So yeah, we do that, and the Maharishi School up here, we gave them some tours too. The school kids up through there.
So would the kids, or maybe this isn't necessarily true, but would kids that are interested in science be interested in this kind of career, do you think? Or, well, again, you said a lot of people come from the military, so they might have that interest too.
Yeah, it just depends. You don't know until you get in it and try it.
Yeah.
But you just have to. It's like anything. You don't know if you're going to like it until you do it.
So how did you start in this career?
Well, I needed a job.
And how long have you been with the city, Steve?
Next month will be 23 years.
Well,
I did 4 years at a surface plant before that, 2 years shallow wells before that. So working on 29 years in the water.
and obviously it doesn't sound like you're sorry that you went this way.
No.
It's been a good career for you.
It's been a good career for me.
Yeah.
It really has. And yeah, I'm glad it happened the way it happened.
Yeah.
And so when I got on with the city here, I thought, okay, I'm just going to start getting my grade licenses and go
Yeah.
from there. And things just kept progressing,
Yeah.
and it's
Awesome.
worked out.
Great. Okay. Well, we've been about 25 minutes. Anything? I'll give you the last word here. Anything else you wanna say that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, if anybody wants to know any more information, give me a call out at the water plant.
Yep.
If you want to set up a tour, give me a call. I'll try and get back with you, and we can see what we can set up, and let you tour the facility and just see where your water does come from.
Yeah. Great.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been out there. It's very fascinating. Okay, so now we use our water and then it goes down our drain. Okay, Shawn, it's your turn. What happens?
Well, it's, as the water comes through the collection system, it comes through many different ways. Most of the city is gravity fed, so our facility sits low enough that most of the sewer lines are higher than our facility. So the line that comes into the plant comes in fairly deep at about 35 foot. It's almost close to a 5-foot diameter pipe that transfers all the water to the facility. Once it gets to the facility, our treatment, that's where our treatment process starts. There's several different segments of that. The first segment that it goes through is a coarse bar screen. So what your bar screen is meant to do is anything that's inorganic that comes down through the line or does not decompose or shouldn't have been flushed, This bar screen mechanically takes that out, and it's put into a dumpster. The second part of that is also with grit removal. So there's a lot of grit that comes down through the sanitary sewer, and grit is a lot of sand, eggshells. We get a lot of that. That's
Is that from our garbage disposals?
Yeah, it is.
So
Yeah.
are you saying we shouldn't put that down there?
Garbage disposals can cause a lot of issues, not only in your home, but in your sanitary sewers as well. We have a fairly good operation to remove it, but you still can't remove all of it, and it's really hard on pumps. With our new facility, which we'll touch base on here in a little bit too, has tackled some of these issues fairly well for us. But once we get through that, then it gets into our treatment process. We're an activated sludge facility, which means that everything is done with bacteria. After it runs through that stages of it, the clear water then will go through UV disinfection. So the UV disinfection, after it'll kill off any type of bacteria that's really left in it, and then we return it to Crow Creek into the watershed.
Interesting. And so one of the big things over the many years is that we had too much overflow, right? When we had heavy rains. Can you talk about, I mean, we're talking over 20 years probably, right?
You bet. Yep. So
That was an issue, and what we've done to fix all that.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of back history. The original facility was built out there in the 1960s. It was upgraded in the 1980s, and then we just went through our current upgrade. So what kind of spearheaded the city of Fairfield to really get into these upgrades and create the facility that we have now is, for one, we had a lot of sanitary sewer overflows, and we'll call those SSOs. We are on a consent order from the DNR and the EPA to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows. So when that started, it put us into the thinking of how do we go about this to, for one, solve the problem, but two, to try to save the city and our residents the most amount of money. Because some of these facilities, to replace every line in the city, to seal them up, to make sure there's no water seeping in, is the price to do that is astronomical, along with time consuming. So with the engineers that we brought on board, McClure Engineering out of North Liberty, they came up with a design that instead of trying to fix and plug all those little holes, we're going to actually bring the water to the plant. We can actually treat it cheaper than we could fixing all these little cracks. So that was the design we went with. It was submitted to the DNR for approval, and they approved our STEP plan, and so did the EPA. So at this point, we started off with Step 1. Step 1 is to get the sewer line coming to the plant much bigger to handle these flows. When we did Step 1, it started at the wastewater plant on Marigold Boulevard, and we ran all the way to Lamson Woods. That plant, that line, like I said, is 50-some inches in diameter. Originally, we were running a 24 and an 18. So this got rid of both of those lines and put one big line. Immediately when that came online, we noticed a huge reduction in everyday water coming in that was seeping in. What was causing that is there was some surprises where that line came through. There's a shift in the bedrock. So it actually was creating a dam. So the water that constantly travels underground would hit this dam, and it found places in our pipe that it could get in. So we were taking all that in. So first, as soon as that went online, we saw a great reduction in that. So that was Step 1. Step 2.
And how long ago was that?
This project, we've been in construction for a little over 6 years now, total. So then we started Step 2, and Step 2 was the most important piece. That was the rebuild of the wastewater treatment facility. To be able to handle extra water coming in and more, for the city to be able to grow, the facility had to be built to a size that could accommodate that. So we went from a facility that could treat somewhere around 3 million gallons a day of water up to 9 million now. Some of that extra right now is basically kind of mothballed. It's for standby. But the facility, that whole facility took in all this equipment that had went way past its lifespan. With wastewater, it's a little bit different than water, equipment-wise, is because there's such a harsh environment that the wastewater equipment has to go through. So longevity of that, some pieces of equipment might be 5 years, some 10, but when we were into that 25-year, 30-year span, some of the equipment would actually are still original from the 60s.
Wow.
We were well past the design standard on it. A lot of duct tape and baling wire was used to keep it together.
That together.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we've got up to that point. The retention was also part of this project. So that huge influx of water that comes in, if we would get a big rain, and what little amount can still make it in through the infiltration, now we have room to actually store almost 40 million gallons of water. So we got retention ponds that they'll just sit statically, and then when our flows come back down, then we can slowly start bringing that water back into the plant for treatment.
Okay.
So
And that was an area of problem previously too, correct?
absolutely, we had a lot of bottlenecks in the system. Lines were not sized correct. They were sized correctly when they were put in, but the city of Fairfield has grown quite a little bit from even when the plant was first designed in the 60s. There still is some original sewer lines around town that are approaching 100 years old.
Wow.
Those lines, though, one of the programs we have is a lining program. We use a cure-in-place, non-dig type system that we have contracted out every year. We do between 1,500 and 3,000 feet a year. And it actually takes an old line that would normally need to be replaced. It takes that and it puts a liner inside of it that completely seals it off. And you gain another 20 to 30, almost 40 years sometimes out of that line. So it's really comes in handy, especially in a business district where we'd be tearing up a lot of streets and potentially buildings. This is a very good product to be used for that, so we utilize that.
Yeah.
So that was the treatment plant. Now we're getting ready to move forward for step 3. That'll be our next one. We'll be running a new line from the treatment facility we'll go directly west, kind of by the hospital, and over to our old lift station, which is they call it grease lightning lift station. That lift station will be rebuilt to be able to take in more capacity as well, and new lines through there. So that'll be step 3, and that'll get us pretty much in line with our consent order, and then we'll look at possibility of a step 4 that we have planned. But it's still way too early in the planning stages to really give any details on it.
So step 3, is this another 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Can you explain that and explain kind of what a lift station does?
You bet. Yep. So a lift station in general is, like I said, most of the city of Fairfield is gravity sewer. It flows without having any type of mechanical force. There is some areas in town though that are lower. So when the water comes through from those houses into our main, they come to a lift station. The lift station has pumps that actually pumps it back up above what our plant sits at for grade, and then it'll go back down into gravity feed again. So lift stations are very valuable. Luckily, we don't have a lot of lift stations in the city of Fairfield, but in this project, this lift station over there will be, it's definitely undersized for the water that we get from that side of town. So it'll be a really good improvement for us.
Yeah. I want to digress a little bit because you touched on it earlier about things coming through the system. And one of the things that, let's talk about the things we should not put down the system, which, the question is, are sanitary wipes flushable, which they say they are, but please touch on that.
The key to that is marketing. Just about anything can be flushable. Sanitary wipes will flush. The problem is they will not degrade. And that's one thing that they leave out of this. We spend several $1,000s a year in repairs and maintenance just because of sanitary wipes. They plug pumps. They come through, they'll plug bar screens. But the biggest thing is they absolutely will not degrade. So if they would happen to make it through our bar screen, then they get into our ditches, all they're doing is taking up space. So that was a marketing scheme that was used very highly in the first start of COVID. Everybody was using sanitary wipes, not only wiping down counters and in restrooms and stuff like that, but seemed like they were all being flushed. We lost 2 fairly pricey pieces of equipment, pump-wise, solely because of these. These pumps are $30,000 to $80,000 a piece.
Ouch.
And one of them, this was the absolute cause of that. So that's something that we try to get out to, and we've talked about it quite a little bit. And the water industry too, WEF, it's our industry here in Iowa, that it's a group of operators like ourselves that work towards solution to these problems. They've really tried to get that out, and we would really like to get that out too. Please don't flush them.
Are there other things besides those wipes that are going down that shouldn't be?
Not really. I mean, what we like to tell anybody is the only thing that is not natural per se that should go down a toilet is toilet paper. Everything else should not go down. There is in your kitchen, that's when we talked about a little bit with eggshells and stuff like that, garbage disposals. That's also something that people should try to stay clear of that, or use a mindset of it that it's anything that we put down there, if it doesn't look like it's going to degrade on its own, it's probably going to cause problems.
Yeah.
Vegetable waste, stuff like that doesn't give us a whole lot of problem. Grease is probably our #1 culprit for backups in the city of Fairfield.
Okay.
Grease,
Like your hamburger grease?
Yep.
People bringing their hamburger grease in the sink?
It sure goes down easy, but it coats pipes really well. It only takes a few tree roots that have gotten into a home's lateral or our main line, and that just all sticks to it. It just keeps growing and growing until it plugs the line off.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, interestingly, we had a line that we had an issue with, and we had the vendor come out, and one of the things that was, not only did we have tree roots, but one of the things, what I found interesting was that there was dental floss down there. And I know neither my husband or I put dental floss down the toilet or down the sink. So, we've had where we're living, that was a rental part of the time. So, I guess I'm just saying that because, hey, that's something you shouldn't put down your sink or your toilet either, because it helped, it hurt our issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And chemicals too, we always want to be chemical wise when we use any type of chemicals. Normally, most chemicals will dilute out by the time it gets to our facility, but there's always that chance too, as some of these newer chemicals are coming out, if we don't read the labels and understand what the disposal practices of that is, can really upset a system like ours. Our system is completely based on using bacteria. And that bacteria can be very, very sensitive. So that's one thing we like homeowners to know too, is chemicals and stuff that you're going to use, and before you pour it down the sink, read the label and see what proper disposal should be.
So things like, I don't know if I should say this, Drano, when your line is clogged up, is that something people should use, or you'd prefer that they don't use that?
Drano is okay. It dilutes out fairly well in our line. The problem you might run into is Drano can actually cause more problems on your own lateral. Especially some of these newer ones that they say for professional use or used by professionals, they build up a lot of heat. When that's being done, if you have loose joints or something on a PVC pipe under your sink, it could possibly dissolve that joint. So it's stuff you just want to really be careful with. I'm all for homeowner DIY, taking care of some of the stuff they can. Just make sure that you really school yourself with this and understand how these products work. And sometimes when you get to that point, it's okay to call a professional.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So use the chemicals sparingly. That's what I hear
absolutely,
you say, right?
yes.
So and now you mentioned that you use bacteria. So that's different than chemicals in your process.
Yes. So our treatment facility is, like I had say, is a activated sludge process, and what that means is, unlike with the water treatment process, Steve has to use a little bit of chemicals with it to treat the water. In our process, we use absolutely zero chemicals throughout our whole facility. It's very unique. We would have to treat the water with chlorine before it went out to the body of water that we're receiving to our receiving stream. With UV disinfection, that takes care of all that for us. So our main job is basically we're cultivating and babysitting billions of bacteria in a certain type of bacteria that we want that will actually, it eats the solids in the water. That's their main job. After there's a sludge age that we call it. Bacteria only lasts for so long or lives for so long. So once the bacteria's lifespan is used up, we are constantly wasting some of that out, and we put that into a storage tank. In the storage tank, this bacteria, depending on where it came from in the other tank, is either anaerobic, which requires oxygen to breathe, like us, or aerobic, that requires oxygen, or anaerobic, that does not. So once we get in the storage tank, we alternate back and forth. And what we're doing with that is we're making sure we kill off completely all the bacteria that's left. Once that process happens, then we actually field apply that sludge, we call it biosolids, to farm fields to use for fertilizer. So it's kind of a unique process that we're cultivating bacteria daily.
So is this the normal process in general that cities have?
Most cities, if they haven't already gone to this process, they will be soon. And most everybody is still using I would say almost everybody is using bacteria to treat their wastewater. The one process that's changing for almost everybody is that final step if we're going to use a chemical to treat the water before we release it, or we're going to go to UV disinfection. And UV disinfection is the absolute answer to this, and most facilities are going to that.
So you mentioned about applying some stuff on farm fields.
Yes.
How much is that? What does that look like with farmers? Do we have one farm that we're doing? What does that look like?
We have a small list of farmers that we use because each field has to be approved by the DNR. And then we take soil samples and check loading rates. Our actual biosolids that we're producing right now are extremely good biosolids. And what I mean by that is that we have really very small trace amounts of metals. Leftover metals in any type of sewage that you've gotten rid of, that can cause problems in fields and soil. So our biosolids actually are ranked really high. It's a great soil conditioner for these farmers, as well as it's anhydrous ammonia. They can use less of that because this is providing that for them. With all that being said, though, it is still a byproduct, and it's an unwanted byproduct. So we have to find a way to get rid of that.
Yeah.
But we have to be really selective on where it's put. We don't want to interfere with groundwater or surface water applications. So, yep, that's how we get rid of it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of testing again that's involved with that, and you're working with the farmers and all of that.
Absolutely.
And it's all have to be with DNR and EPA approved and all that jazz.
You bet.
Yep. So let's talk about a little bit, what part of that sewer line, belongs to the city and what part belongs to the homeowner.
So that's one question we get asked several times a week, and it can be a little confusing. So the main line that we call it that's our main line. You have a sewer line that comes from your house, comes to the main line, and it has a tap that goes into our main line. The city actually only owns the main line. The homeowner will own the tap and their lateral going back to their house.
And is that usually on one side of the street or the other?
It can actually be in the most, well, and I couldn't say most, but several of them are in the center of the street.
Yeah.
Is where the main line runs. Us as a city, when we put a new sewer line in, like Steve was saying too with his water line, we'll actually put new taps on that line and get it back to the easement. But the ones that have been there for a while, it's something that they can age and go bad too. We really try to suggest to people too, especially with home buyers, to look into before they purchase a home to have the sewer line inspected. These sewer lines can be cameraed. It'll tell all the details of the line. They can see it on video and give some insight of what you're going into, because this is an unseen problem. It's buried.
Right.
So that's one thing that even home sellers too can look into to give some peace of mind.
Yeah.
to new
And we have
buyers.
local vendors that do that. You don't do that, correct?
Correct. We have local vendors around that can do that.
And can they call you and find out who those local, or call City Hall? Where do they call?
They can call City Hall, or they can
Okay.
also get on City Hall's website. We have a list on there of approved contractors that are actually bonded to work in the city's easements.
Okay.
That's a really important list to look at. It gives not only the homeowner protection, but it gives us, the city, a little protection too for if something would go wrong.
Great. So if somebody's got a backup in their basement or whatever, again, who should they call first?
If you have a backup in the basement, the first call, we would actually appreciate that call to come in. What we would do is actually check an upstream and downstream manhole to see if there's standing water. When that happens, if we do not find standing water, which happens a lot, it's usually in the lateral. Then they could get on the approved vendor site and look for sewer cleaners on there. Your next step would be to call a plumber.
Okay.
But if it's just slow water draining down a drain or stuff like that, that's when you would call a plumber first.
Yeah.
The only time we would really expect that first call to come in is if there's standing water in the basement. And it's not so much, we understand that it can cause some damage to the house, but our first and utmost priority is public health. So we want to make sure that if that's sewage water in your basement, that it needs to be taken care of, and we try to give you some tips on how to get that alleviated.
Yeah. And when you say call, you're talking about calling in again to City Hall?
You bet.
Correct?
They could call City Hall. If it's after hours, where City Hall is closed, they can also, the police station fields calls for us as well.
Okay.
And they can direct us to our on-call operator.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
You bet.
So let's talk about personnel. How many people do you have? What does it take to do this career?
Yep.
Just talk about that a little bit, and how long you've been with the city of Fairfield. And
You bet. I've been with the city of Fairfield for coming on 16 years. We have 7 full-time employees, counting myself, plus a seasonal employee that's worked for us. We have 2 crews, similar to the water plant. We have a collection crew, which is in charge of all the lift stations and pipes out in the system, as well as a treatment crew. They take care of everything in the plant for the actual treatment process. We cross-work constantly, but we have a really good crew with that. We are in the middle of classification for our treatment plant from 3 to 4. So there's still some little bit of things to work out there and smooth out. But the Iowa as a whole is extremely short of wastewater operators. It's a wonderful career to get into. It might not be the most pleasant at times, but it's not like that every day. Overall, the pay and benefits for working for a municipality is absolutely wonderful. And to be able to see you making a difference in the environment is really what my guys enjoy. We're kind of on the same thing with getting your license. It's almost the same as Steve's to the letter. We actually require a grade 2 to be able to do anything by yourself. Most of my people came in with no license at all. We've self-trained through the city, got them their CEUs and put them on a career path that worked well for them and wonderful for us.
And that's still possible.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There is so many towns right now that are looking for operators. and that'll never end. Just in the operator database of operators, we're going to lose, I can't remember the exact number, so I don't want to be quoted on it, but we're going to lose like 30% of grade 3 and 4 wastewater operators over the next 5 years.
Wow.
And the reason why that is because most of us aren't getting any younger. A lot are retiring. We don't have near as many kids and younger adults coming into it that are leaving. So there's going to be some big changeover.
this is going to be a great career, really.
It's a
for people.
Absolutely perfect timing.
Yeah.
And like Steve said, Kirkwood has a really good water program. As long as DMAC in Des Moines has a wonderful water program.
Okay.
And there's so many online opportunities with this as well. Kirkwood has a great online college system to be able to get your license just like in person.
Well, and it's not only municipalities that have water treatment systems, I mean, right?
No.
The hog processing plant in Ottumwa has one, right?
That's right.
There's all kinds of industries that use treatment plants.
Absolutely. And most bigger factories that actually will use any water in their treatment will have water and wastewater operators on site. So yeah, it's not just a municipality. It's anybody that has any type of manufacturing as well. Like I said, we'll usually have wastewater operator jobs.
Even the hospital's maintenance, if they feed any kind of chemical, they
You bet.
have to have a license.
We need to move your thing.
They have to have a licensed water operator to do that.
Yep,
He's saying even the hospital.
Yeah.
you bet.
If
Interesting,
they
yeah.
change the water quality in any way, they have to have a water license.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, I think this is a great opportunity for young people to learn about, and again, I'm sure you could connect with City Hall and get a tour from Steve. Now, Shawn, I know that you've mentioned sometimes high school kids do come out and take tours.
You bet. We do a few tours. It takes a little bit of scheduling on our end because so many areas of our facility can be extremely dangerous without the type of training. So, but no, we welcome school tours to get a hold of us.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be more than happy to do that. We are in the process of updating our Facebook page too with City of Fairfield Wastewater. So you'll be able to see some of the new things that are coming online with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you see any type of people, certain types of people that are applying for this kind of job? For example, like he's got military people coming out that get inside these, the water towers. Anything like that for you in your area?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Every one of our employees came from a completely different background.
Uh-huh.
We got a great mix of people that work there and employees for us. We're one
Yeah.
big family.
And you're fully staffed right now?
We are fully
Correct?
staffed right at the moment, yes.
Either one of you, any retirees coming up? Soon? Next 5 years? Maybe both of you? Yeah, so at any rate, obviously, again, maybe not here in Fairfield right away, but in the short term, in the intermediate term, no doubt we'll need people. And
Absolutely.
certainly it sounds like in the industry, there's going to be opportunity.
There will be opportunities, and the more laws that get changed and the more laws that come on to help protect our environment opens up that many more jobs.
Yes, absolutely.
And with the push to protect our environment the way we are, I can see this really exploding.
Yeah.
So.
One question, I was just reviewing the questions we had, and one I don't know that we answered, and that is, what do I do if I smell sewer gas in my home?
That's one that coming up on this time of year, especially through the winter, most of the drains in a basement get easily forgot about. The problem is most of your furnaces are also in the basement. In the wintertime, that furnace, it'll actually pull all the moisture out of the air. We've all noticed our house is so dry in the wintertime. It also pulls all the water out of those traps in your floor drains. Toilets that are not being used, sinks that are not being used. The biggest thing that we like to make sure in the wintertime is to put water down those drains, at least monthly.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to create that block so the sewer gas can't just flow freely into your house. Another thing too is almost every house has a roof stack, and that's a vent for the sewer line. take a quick glance at that, see if you can see it from the ground. Make sure you don't see a bird's nest in it. Birds love to nest in them when they don't have some type of a graded cap over the end.
Okay.
So that's another thing. Those are the two biggest things to check always. If you start smelling sewer gas, rotten egg smell a little bit, if it gets to a really bad rotten egg smell, that's something, and then you need to be notifying us to come take a look for you immediately. But yeah, this is a common problem that will happen in the winter, and that's the easiest way to alleviate it.
Okay, well, that was really good information, and gee whiz. Any last word from you about what we've talked about or anything we left out?
I don't think so. I feel that we're on the right track for success. We made huge improvements over the last few years here, and we look forward to meeting all the goals that have been set for us.
Yeah, well, and I'll just say one thing, and that is there have been a couple times in the last several years, or more recently, last 2 or 3 years probably, where people have maybe moved in from another community, and they've come to me and said, why are our rates so high? And I have to say, I think we're kind of ahead of the game in smaller communities of fixing what needed to be fixed.
We absolutely are starting to become ahead of the game.
Yeah.
All these little communities, and even bigger communities like the size of Fairfield, that haven't done these required repairs yet, they have to meet the same directives as we do.
Yeah.
So it's coming.
It's coming. And
Yep.
so those communities are going to have higher rates as well. They just haven't got there yet.
That's right. And even though it seems really high to us right now, we picked the right time to do it, especially when we're seeing what inflation is doing. That is all through our equipment as well.
Yeah.
Doing the same project that the city just took on at the wastewater plant 10 years from now can be a completely different story.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness we've been
Yes.
doing this over, like you say, the last 6 years, and we weren't starting right now. Because
Absolutely
that would be
right.
a nightmare.
Yes.
We would be talking about a much higher cost, and believe me, this has been significant, in the millions of dollars to get what we've gotten done. And
Yes.
we are not done yet. So, again, tell your guys thank you. We appreciate what they do
Absolutely.
every day. They don't get thanked enough, either one of your departments. But we can't function without you guys.
Right.
So we do appreciate it. I know that, our community does too. And if there's, Jason, do we have any online questions? Okay, maybe we don't even have anybody watching. Good. A few people watching. This will be rebroadcast, so you can watch it in your home whenever it's convenient for you. A lot of good information, so we do hope people watch. And I really appreciate the time here, because I know it's after hours for you guys, and we appreciate you coming in and sharing your information. And with that, we will close up. And again, if you have additional questions, you can email me, mayor@fairfieldiowa.gov, or call into City Hall. We'll try to get your questions answered. So thanks to Jason for coming in a little early tonight, too. And have a good rest of your evening. Thank you.